So in this segment, we're going to be discussing, are Labour kind of bringing hope? You know, Labour have been accused of being boring. And here Labour are going to try and defend the accusations.
I've got to let my fellow podcaster in, so I'm about to...
The fact that media figures have podcasts with politicians is a bit...
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
Onto the break. Stability is the change. I mean, it might not be that exciting, but it's working, huh?
Yeah, it's working. And actually, do you know what? It seems boring, but, do you know, it really, really matters. I have watched the city that I live in have investment that wasn't there when I was a kid brought into it because of the promise of, you know, the big infrastructure, the HS2. And actually, the problem that we are now facing and that north of Birmingham faces is that we now don't know what's going to happen. This constant chopping and changing on things that were meant to drive our country forward, it has just been so tiring. And unfortunately, what it has done is if you look at our rates, if you want some facts, if you look at rates of inward investment and investment within our country, it has been woeful.
So this is true. Inward investment, I think it's the lowest in the G7. But again, like the reason why you got this private investment going into Birmingham is because of HS2. That's her argument there. So if Labour did back the bigger infrastructure projects, we could actually get somewhere with more kind of private investment into certain areas, especially areas that HS2 was meant to connect to. So the argument of, oh, it's boring and whatever, securonomics and following the Tories' fiscal plan, which Labour are doing, it doesn't really make sense when you hear her argument fully, which is we need more investment to come in. She's seen more investment come in because of HS2, big infrastructure project by the government. But then shouldn't Labour back that then by that logic? Because it brings in money. Here we've got this. I
guess the point is that you talk about the toughest inheritance, or she has, about that any other previous government has faced. So that's...
I mean, that's not true, because if you look at the toughest, right, it's Clement Attlee. If you look at that, our debt to GDP ratio was around 200% during World War II. It declined, you know, obviously it would do after the war ends. So you would hope that after kind of we've gone through the big disasters of COVID and things like that, our debt to GDP ratio should come down. You would hope. But that is the worst a government has inherited.
That's the reality of what you're dealing with. Do you worry, let's put it another way, do you worry that the economic offering that you're going to give the country isn't where you would like to be, that you aren't going to offer people inspiration? Is it a bit depressing for you, that?
Not at all, because I think we do offer credible hope for the future. We've seen what happens when a government comes forward, as Liz Truss's government did, with a host of tax cuts that were unfunded. We've seen the turmoil that caused in the markets. We've seen the incredible damage that did to our international reputation. So to be and aspire to be a government, if we have the privilege of becoming one, that has that fiscal stability over the medium term, that is precisely what attracts investment. What attracts investment here and in...
What attracts investment is government-backed investment. That's what we've seen. That's one of the things that your stability will help. But when you look at America now, there's a lot of investment going into America because of things like the Inflation Reduction Act. We're seeing huge subsidies being offered by the government, and we're seeing a tug of war between the EU and the US for companies to set up shop. That's what brings in investment. It's subsidies, it's government stimulus, government programs. Those are the things that bring in investment, or at least help to. You know, we've seen the UK kind of struggle a bit with that, but I guess access to trade would help as well.
Indeed, from overseas, is knowing that stability is in place in the medium term, and that's exactly what a Labour government will provide.
I think we're going to be hearing a lot more of the motto, stability is change. Am I correct?
Strong and stable, Theresa May.
Correct.
Given the events of the last few years, 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors, there's no doubt that stability is a massive change from the government we've just seen.
OK, well...
This is true, but it doesn't really combat the lack of hope allegations. It doesn't really combat the boring allegations either. Really, I know people want my politics to be boring. Is like, cool, but like, do you want your politics to be not getting rid of the 2-child cap, which is the thing that plunges kids into poverty? Are you backing that?
20 points ahead in the polls. Whatever she's doing when she talks about the economy, it seems to be working.
I mean, that's not really true. That's because the Tories have botched it. You know, like, you're winning a game because the other team's scoring 50 own goals, and you've got the goalkeeper throwing punches at the centre back. That's the opposition.
With voters for now. So, Nick, thank you.
I think when we get close to the election, that's when the real questions will come out, because we've seen Rachel Reeves struggle under questioning. There is a video that someone did publish saying, Rachel Reeves' great economic plans, and I'll be doing a review of that soon, because there is the transcript for the speech there, which we can actually look at properly. But this is, I think it's the final one we want to go over. No, I think there's a couple more, actually. Let's have a listen to this.
There's a real difference between the way that we would approach public services if we won the next election, because we've already set out specific loopholes that we would close to get an immediate injection of cash into the NHS, into schools and so on. But we know that in the medium and long term, the only way to have that sustainable revenue for public services is to get the economy growing. And so that's why it could be a virtuous circle where...
Again, how are you growing the economy?
Strong public services support economic growth, and economic growth makes people better off, as well as getting the tax receipts to invest in public services.
The non-DOMs I'm going to come back to, because obviously the Conservatives have now closed that loophole and you haven't yet revealed...
Yeah, they stole the policy, but they haven't implemented it properly. It's the same thing they did with the windfall taxes. And I think that's something Labour could focus on, but they haven't for some reason. Focus on how their implementation would be different, at least.
How you're going to replace that money to spend in the NHS. Let me come back to that. There is a contradiction here, isn't there? She's signing up to the Conservatives' budget, but she says strong public services need economic growth. How do you square those two things?
Well, look, the Conservatives haven't even set out the detail of what will happen, after the next general election if they want.
The
So
OBR
we've
has.
set out.
The OBR has, and they say 2.3% in unprotected departments.
Well, they haven't set out the detail, so we will see what we inherit. But we're very clear about the difference we would make immediately with those loopholes, and then we come back to this point about economic growth, because it is front and centre of everything we want to do. We know that if we won the election,
It's like a teacher grading something, the way she's writing stuff down.
we would inherit a mess where the economy isn't working, people are worse off, public services are on their knees. And that's why Rachel set out this fundamentally different direction, this new approach to the economy, to rebuild the economy on these foundations of strength and security and get the economy growing.
She noted in her lecture tonight that public services are at breaking point. Now.
Yes, and that's why the immediate injection of cash is so important. But
It's not going to be a lot of money they're putting in by stopping the non-dom tax. It's not going to be a lot. Also with the schools as well. I know the breakfast clubs and stuff. I've said this is a good policy beforehand, but again, it's not going to help them. In terms of repairing the damage that's happened to these schools. You've got collapsing buildings.
As I said,
Forgive me, there won't be an immediate injection of cash because the Conservatives have already closed the loopholes on non-DOMs, and you haven't told us where that's coming from or if it's coming.
Well, on the other loopholes we set out, which are to do with private schools,
He's struggling here. This man he's not built for this.
VAT and business rates and private equity. But if I just say on the non-DOMs point, we are still committed.
This is where it's just what Labour have not got are strong kind of media figures, at least people who can hold their own in TV conversations and things like this, interviews, because he's drowning here. She said the Tories will close the non-dom tax, which he could fight that one if he wanted to, and so he's kind of struggling to answer the question of we're going to do the non-dom tax, and she's like, well, the Tories will close that one, and it's like, okay. It doesn't really work. How many more have we got? There's this one.
So that's your argument. Sharon Graham from Unite says that Labour's sticking to phony fiscal rules, which I think she is referring to sticking broadly to Conservative...
Which she is sticking to the Conservatives, Jeremy Hunt's fiscal rule.
Fiscal rules, that Labour's ruling out taxing the wealthy more, and you've ended up in a straitjacket of your own making. True. Where you can't make radical decisions on increasing public investment because you have set these guardrails for how you want to deliver on the economy.
Although I think that actually being
does it not worry you? Let's just break it. Does it not worry you when the head of Unite, a massive union, is this critical of Labour's economic plan? Let's just boil it down.
Well, obviously, whoever is having this discussion with us, whether it's a trade union leader or indeed anyone else, of course you want to have that discussion. And this evening, Rachel will be making that speech. But in terms of being radical and bringing about change, you can't do that without fiscal and economic stability. That's the bedrock.
I don't know. I think Attlee might disagree with you a bit there, pal. And this is what I mean. This is expectation management. This is what they're doing. I don't think it'll be a case of, Labour are going to say, oh, we can't do anything, and they're going to do amazing things and say, oh, look, we under promised and over delivered. I don't see that happening, I'll be honest. I think what's going to happen is if they do kind of breach the fiscal rules, the media are going to jump on them and Labour are going to back down. That's what we've seen from Labour consistently in the media. It's Tories attack on a policy, Labour are like, oh no, what are we going to do? We're going to back down on that policy. We're not going to fight on that policy. We're going to back out. We're going to look scared, and we're not going to implement it. I can see that happening in the after the general. I'll be honest. That's the last kind of clip I want to discuss on this one. Next one's on Sunak. So, anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.